You've worked hard, you're prepared. It's an opportunity. And there's a lot of guys around this league every year who make a team just based on preseason game 3. And so my encouragement to you is go for it tomorrow, right? Tee it up and go for it. You got nothing to lose. You've put in all the work, you've put in all the preparation. Go out there tomorrow and let it go, man.
That is Sean McDermott the night before the Bills preseason finale in Tampa. And I'm Andrew Siciliano. Thank you for listening to and watching the official Hard Knocks podcast as we look back on episode 4 and really the heart of episode 4, game number 3. Your tape is your tape. Jamil Adai tells his cornerback room that, and Sean McDermott tells his entire team that, remember, this is your shot before that final preseason game. If it isn't here in Buffalo, the other 31 teams are watching as we get towards cutdown day. Go make an impression. The NFL is the ultimate reality show. And this episode 4 takes you behind the scenes of the final game, the final test, the final map, the final challenge, whatever you want to call it. Coming up, somebody who is on the sideline for all the Bills preseason games and in the building, Maddie Glab, is set to join us. I've used this analogy before about the greatest reality show and how few jobs there are in the NFL. Roughly 3,000 for the 32 teams before cutdown day and roughly 1,800 once the season actually begins, if you include the 53-man roster. I think it's important to note here that the practice squad is a really good job. Teams are allowed to keep 16 players on the practice squad in addition to the 53, right? 48 dress on game day. Those 16 practice every day against the ones, against the twos. They always have the opportunity to get up on game day, to be actually on the field if they get that elevation. But those jobs pay really well. So if you make the practice squad and you're a young player, 2 years of experience or under, you're going to make $13,000 a week. If you stick around for the entire 18 weeks of the season, you're going to make $234,000 in the next 4 months. If you're a veteran, the minimum is $17,500 a week. They can pay you up to $22,000 a week. We're talking between $315,000 and roughly $400,000 a year. And at any point when you're on the practice squad, if another one of the teams, the other 31 teams, want to sign you to the active roster, you can leave. The Bills can't keep you. The only way they can keep you is if they say, hey, we'll put you on our active roster. What makes the third and final preseason game more interesting, really, for me, is the idea that so many teams, they just don't want to play their ones in any way at all. They don't want their guys out there. Some teams didn't even really travel with their first team. That's a whole nother story. So you have guys pressed into action in roles that they're never going to use or never going to be in the regular season. Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, they're sitting there in the personnel meeting before the game, and they're going through like, well, who's up and who's down. KJ Hamler is going to be the emergency running back because you're not going to play Ty Johnson. You're not going to play James Cook. You're not going to play any of those guys. Ray Davis, who you might need week 1. So, hey, if somebody gets hurt, if Frank Gore Jr. can't keep going, KJ Hamler, you're going to be the backup running back. I also want to caution people as you maybe fall in love with Jimmy Ciarlo or you fall in love with KJ Hamler's story of perseverance. But when you get down to the final 53, teams start looking around. Well, wait a minute, someone else got cut over there. We kind of like that guy more than the guy that we kept. I'm going to put in a waiver claim. And then the waiver claims get processed, kind of like in your fantasy league, in inverse order of standings from last year. And that goes for the first 3 weeks of this year. So basically go back to the draft, right? The Titans pick first, the Browns pick second. Forget about the Browns and Jaguars trade. Trades don't matter. So it's the Titans first, the Browns second, the Giants third, the Patriots fourth, and so on and so forth. That's the order that teams can claim players who were waived by other teams. So there's a chance that if you make the team, the Bills or anyone, at the deadline on Tuesday, that you're going to find out the next day that you get cut. Now, generally when that happens, you get brought back from the practice squad. But there have been times over the years where you make the 53, they find out a day later they like somebody else more, and then you get cut, and then you don't come back to the practice squad. That's the most heartbreaking by far of these situations. You battle, and then you know in the back of your mind, I can't really celebrate because I don't know for sure. And here's something else. As teams always churn the bottom of their roster, especially right now, it's kind of a game of chicken. Some teams will immediately after the final preseason game cut guys the next morning, but they're not going to cut everybody. They'll just do a few cuts. Maybe they'll do 10, maybe they'll do a dozen. And then they sit back and they wait to see who else gets cut. Or they sit back and they're watching the preseason games on NFL Network and they go, you know what? I like that guy. I like that guy on whatever the other team. I want that guy. I bet they're going to cut him. And so they call up and they say, hey, are you going to cut that guy? Okay. I'll give you a 7th round pick for him. Or maybe we could work something out like a late round pick swap, a 6, a 7, whatever. Maybe it's a pick in 2 years. So I don't have to compete with the other teams when you cut him. So don't cut him. Let me just give you anything for him. Like a 7th round pick's like a case of beer. Can we do that? Can we work something out? We saw the Eagles on Sunday make 3 such trades, including bringing back Fred Johnson, who used to be in their building as an offensive lineman. And whether it's guys that the Bills could sign off waivers or whether it's just help that they could get in a trade or street free agents, veterans who have yet to sign, I think they're going to be looking for help at corner and potentially at safety. We haven't even really talked about the Cole Bishop storyline. That was not part of Hard Knocks, but it was a storyline locally in Buffalo last week. Sean McDermott needs to see more from his second-year safety. They have legit question marks in the secondary, injury question marks as well, with Tre'Davious White's injury last week in practice. I think the Bills are going to be active, making moves and looking to improve. So there's a lot of that bottom of the roster shuffling or churn, go back to episode 1 in Pittsford Dairy, the churn. And that's what Brandon Beane and all the other GMs are going through right now. All right, so let's talk about some of these players who we see in episode 4 who know that the final preseason game is their final shot for the Bills or for the other 31 teams that might be watching. We see Zach Davidson, the tight end, riding his bike. Great that he has off-field pursuits. Nice little aside. We also know that Zach was a punter in college before he transitioned to the NFL. He's been around for a while. Like, he got drafted in 2021. He's only played in a handful of regular season games, fought some injuries, certainly, been on practice squads, certainly. This is his moment. And we see that he could punt. I mean, a 61-yard punt. You hear Josh Allen go like, what a bleeping punt. Zach, that's great. He also made some news, and I mean national news, because he got into a little skirmish with Shiloh Sanders, which is important here because you hear the Bills during the week, and you see this in episode 4, talk about the fact that, hey, Zach knows he's got to block, and he's a willing blocker, like he's got to block. We need to see that. We need to see a little bit of fight. We saw that. We actually saw a fight. And we saw Shiloh Sanders ejected because Zach Davidson was trying to be a physical football player in that final preseason game. Before the game, you hear the Bills mention that that's Jason Light, the GM of the Buccaneers, said, hey, who's that 84? So mission accomplished, right? I showed that I could punt, which was just whatever in case of emergency. But I showed that I could be a physical football player, and I got the attention of another team. And one last note on Davidson punting. Remember, we saw Ray Davis kicking a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned that. That hasn't been done in a regular season game in like forever, with one exception. We're talking a non-position player hitting a field goal. Dare Ogunbowale, the running back for the Houston Texans, special teams ace, actually did kick a field goal 2 years ago. It was the first time a position player had made a field goal in a game that counted in 20 years. So Ray Davis did that 2 weeks ago. We hadn't seen it in a regular season game since Wes Welker in 04. So they're cute little preseason stories, but you're not going to see it during the regular season. And then we have the case of Frank Gore. Frank Gore Jr., that is the only player in the NFL that had more than 100 yards rushing and 100 yards receiving in the preseason. The entire league. I still don't know that he's going to make the final 53 because the Bills have 3 running backs. They use 3 running backs. They're the same 3 running backs from last year, and that likely isn't going to change. He's probably destined for the practice squad, but you're rooting for him. I mean, how cool is it to see that video of like him as a little kid with dad on the Fox set during the NFC Championship game over a decade ago? Like that smiling face, that little kid is now beloved in that locker room. As Josh Allen says, how weird is it, or cool is it, or surreal is it that I got to hand the ball off to his old man and now I'm handing the ball off to him? He's one of those guys you root for. He has yet to play in an NFL regular season game. His old man played, if you include the postseason, in 250 NFL games. One of these days, Frank Gore Jr. is going to get a carry in a real NFL game. Hopefully it is sometime soon. I also think everyone's rooting for Jimmy Ciarlo, and I'm going to take a victory lap here. Actually, I shouldn't. It's not about me. It's about him. But I did say a couple of weeks ago when we saw Jimmy Ciarlo on camera for the first time, follow him. Good-looking dude. Army. This is a storyline. You watch. But forget about the good looks and the storyline. He's playing really well. And he has a shot to make this team strictly on how he is playing football, which is by far the most important thing. And remember, he just got here.
I came up here with really 2 pairs of clothes. My car's in New Jersey, so, it's difficult to get to and from the facility if you don't want to leave at the time that they're running the shuttles. But I just try to get the things done that I need to get done.
Also want to focus here that Jimmy Ciarlo says he's playing nickel, meaning like 5th DB. He's a linebacker by trade. This is a little bit different than Zach Davidson punting or KJ Hamler being available as the emergency running back in Tampa in that final preseason game. This is showing like legitimate position flex. Legitimate, I can add value to the regular season flex, so to speak. If Jimmy Ciarlo can prove that he could play nickel, he has that much of a better chance of making the team. This isn't just like an emergency thing. This is the more that you can do. I could be the Swiss Army knife, the Army guy, and I could prove that I make the team, or I could make the team. You get my point there. We also see more of KJ Hamler in this episode. So gone is the whole he's running around on a scooter thing, and now we're focusing on can he make the team. He's the classic example of a guy that has so much talent, that was drafted really high. At one point, he was the 46th overall pick at a Penn State, 2nd round pick by the Broncos, but he has had just so much bad luck. But when you are picked high, there's always a team that's willing to give you a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th chance elsewhere because of that talent and because of that pedigree. He just has to shake the bad luck and stick somewhere.
I got to be here for a reason. Just stay on me, though. Just stay on me. I know I'm here for a reason. God ain't, he ain't bring me this far for no reason.
So we finally get the KJ Hamler cardiac story. The fact that he got to the hospital, drove himself to the hospital, and he thought that that might be, in his words, my last day. He thought he was having a heart attack. He's a young man in his 20s, thought he was having a heart attack. He got through it, and here he is. I'm rooting for him, again, much like Jimmy Ciarlo. This is a different story, however, and I hope he does make it. But we see the bad as well. We see earlier in the week in practice where he says, shitty day, bro. And he admits that he's in his head because he knows this might be it. Like, this might be his last shot. He has talent, but he's an aging player. And teams like the Bills have to make these decisions. Do we keep an aging player who has overcome a lot, who we like a lot, over a younger player? He had a touchdown during the game, called back, still made a nice play. Is that enough? Also, practice squad is a great outcome for KJ Hamler. I know it's not what he wants, but as a veteran, you are always one injury away, or a young player, from getting called up to the 53. I think that's a great outcome for KJ Hamler. Fingers crossed. Aside from the storylines of who's making the team, which is why we watch Hard Knocks, I know, Thought it was cool how the Hard Knocks cameras went behind the scenes with the quarterbacks, with the cameras, with Chris Hess, the biometric expert. The technology right now that NFL teams use might blow your mind.
How do you take power from the ground, pass it up through the body?
Good.
Right. We're going to look at shoulder external rotation, the actual amount. We're going to look at velocity that their arm is rotating. We look at what's happening, especially with the lead leg. So after the foot strikes the ground, they stride, front foot hits the ground. We don't want to see that lead knee flexing anymore. And then we're going to look at the rotation speeds of the body. How is that energy transferring from the ground up through and out through the hand and the ball?
Biometric experts breaking down throwing motions is also something that some teams do for a number of reasons. But one of them is to keep your quarterbacks healthy. Like baseball pitchers, if I can't identify things you're doing wrong, I can lower injury risk. Look, you can get blindsided by a defensive end and you could get a bad injury. Somebody can hit you low and you can get a bad injury. But if I could keep your shoulder, your elbow healthy, I mean, why not? Spend the money. Josh Allen says that Chris Hess changed his life, at least when it comes to his throwing motion. Said he's seen him at his worst, he has seen him at his best. Technically, it's called kinematic sequencing, which is, and I Googled this, ready? All right. A kinematic sequence is the proximal to distal transfer of energy in a rotational movement where larger proximal body segments accelerate and decelerate to transfer speed and power to smaller, more distal segments, and finally, an implement like a golf club or baseball. Chris Hess also calls Josh an alien. For whatever that is worth, Josh was a chucker, Chris says, and then a thrower, and then a passer, and now he is an arm dominant, or he was an arm dominant thrower. Now he is a passer. NFL Films has all that great archival footage, and you can see it. Like when he says chucker, you almost feel like it looks like he's shot putting a ball. Then he says thrower, and you can see there's that change in motion. And then we get to passer, and you see modern Josh Allen. Those slow-mos were pretty cool. They also had some amazing slow-mos later in the game. During the game, with the quarterbacks, just amazing NFL Films footage. Let's get to the game. So I looked this up. It was 91% humidity at kickoff. That's the official listed humidity on the official NFL stats from the Bills preseason finale when they kicked off in Tampa at 7 p.m. 91% humidity. Yet Bills Mafia was down there with a snow machine in the parking lot at Raymond James. Like, tip of the cap to Bills Mafia. I love you. You guys are the best. Speaking of Bills Mafia, I'm thrilled to have our next guest on the show this week. She has had a front row seat to see Bills Mafia. She has been there when the Bills have gotten this close, so close to making it back to the Super Bowl. I'm so happy that Maddie has made time to be this week's guest. Let's introduce you on the official Hard Knocks podcast to the Bills team reporter. You see her on the sideline as well during the preseason, especially when these games are simulcast nationally on NFL Network. She is in the building every day. She has yet to be featured on Hard Knocks, but she should. Maddie Glab, thanks for joining the podcast.
Happy to be on. I'm excited to join the podcast.
Well, we're excited to get your thoughts on Hard Knocks from Pittsford Dairy to Ed Oliver on a horse. Maddie, what has stood out to you so far?
I think the biggest takeaway for me has just been how the Hard Knocks crew has painted the picture of our team. I think you get the takeaway that this group is really tight and there's something special brewing in Buffalo. I remember watching that first episode. We were lucky enough to do a huge premiere around downtown Buffalo. We had a lot of the Hard Knocks crew in. We did a whole Q&A with a bunch of the guys, and sitting there watching the episode in this beautiful theater, there were points where you just saw the camaraderie come across on the screen. And I myself, who's been covering this team now for 7 seasons, got a little bit emotional because it was so cool to see that on the screen and have the whole world know, like, these are a bunch of brothers who are fighting to make it to the Super Bowl and then win the whole thing.
Which part got you emotional?
I think it was the final scene in the first episode. I think it was when they started playing Bright Side and you see the fans having a good time. You see the players just laughing alongside of each other. And you just it was the perfect picture, I think, of what training camp is and why so many guys love going to Rochester to build that team chemistry and figure out their team identity for the season.
I'm curious how Buffalo views the curtain being pulled back for America and the sense of community in Western New York that wraps its arms around the team. This is our team, is the attitude, right? And now they kind of have to share the team with everyone else. Is that something that is welcomed or is it viewed differently?
I think it's very welcomed. Now, if you're talking to Bills Mafia as a fan base, as this team is making a playoff push, they may say, you know what, you should have been riding with us earlier on in the season. But we're in training camp. We're accepting new fans right now.
Get on the bandwagon, right?
Yeah, get on the bandwagon. It's early. Come have fun with us. But I think this is a team that the city is so proud of since Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane stepped through the doors in 2017. They're proud of the coaching staff and players and scouting department breaking that long drought that they had going. And they're proud of the success. I mean, 5 straight AFC East titles. Josh Allen wins the MVP. Yes, they're still fighting for the big kahuna, the Super Bowl. But a lot of people believe the Bills have the best roster they've had right now under Sean McDermott. And they've got a huge game against the Ravens week 1. But when you look at what this team can offer people, I think the city is really proud to show people, like, look at what the Bills are about. Look at how much they're about family. Look at how fun it looks like to be a part of this group and cheer on the entire team. So I got the vibe that when this was announced from the very beginning, Bills fans were over the moon about the fact that their team was going to be on Hard Knocks for 5 weeks in the preseason, where everybody got to watch what happens, what takes place, and hey, come be a part of the fun.
Yeah, and the fun, we saw the fun with Ed Oliver last week. Ed Oliver's a character, obviously. But Maddie, you and I know the whole horse thing has been there since leading up to the draft, when the Bills took him in the first round. Those viral videos of him going down the street on his horse on the side of the road, but I guess America hadn't seen them. And then, I mean, that was he was kind of the star of last week, if you will. Those were the viral moments with Don Julio and chaos. And that stuck with everybody, even though that story's been told because he has such a great personality.
Yeah, Ed Oliver is one of one. The best part about his game this year is talking to general manager Brandon Beane and our head coach Sean McDermott. They believe he's playing his best football yet. Now, this is an NFL veteran who has had some great seasons in the league, but they think this year Ed Oliver is stepping it up a notch. So that's been awesome to hear on the football side of things. When it comes to horses, I absolutely love how happy he looked on that horse in that scene in last week's episode. I mean, the pure joy radiating from his body as he got on that horse and started riding it next to Ty Johnson. You could tell, like, this is Ed Oliver's, like, happy place. I loved how they showed that photo of him as, like, a 9-year-old boy on that horse during the episode. It just shows that, hey, this guy's been loving horses for a long, long time. I also want a dad who when you say, hey, Dad, I want a horse. And Ed goes, 2 weeks later, I had a horse.
Do you have a favorite Ed Oliver horse name?
What he said, like 2 times. I think he has like Sissy and Sassy is another
Sissy
one.
and Sassy.
I think
Don Julio
was a good one. Chaos was a good one. For whatever reason, I like the Sissy and Sassy. I thought that was funny.
I have a horse named Two Time, Sissy, Sassy, Chaos, Mona Lisa, Gigi, Cruz, Panic Snatcher, Blocky, Prime, Budweiser, Don Julio. Man, I'm up to 30 horses now, and man, it's just a blessing being around these gentle giants.
And then later in the episode, he's asked about Prickly Pete. I don't think he initially had listed Prickly Pete, but a big fan of that one as well. One of the characters, Maddie, we haven't seen, hopefully we get him near the end, is Keon Coleman with his fantastic coats. From the day he got drafted last year, it's not just about the coats, it's about the value, right? He said, hey, I bought a winter coat on sale in the summer because I'm coming to Buffalo, and hey, I'm not going to waste money. And his big puffy coats, he's a character as well.
Such a character. Ever since he got drafted and got to Buffalo, he took the world by storm. Those clips that went out of the coat, and then right after the press conference, he's eating the media's cookies to the side of the press conference room and having a ball doing that. When he came to Buffalo on his 30 visit, we have a fake putting green in our office that's just, some putters and a place to put the ball into on office carpet. So you never know how the greens are going to lie that day. But Keon Coleman came through during his visit, and the dude was putting up a storm. That's where the Tiger Wish He Could came from. He was somebody that I thought, wow, you would fit in this building. You would fit with the personalities on this team. When he actually left from his visit in Buffalo, he left something with one of our security guards and said, I'm going to leave this here because I know I'm going to be back. That's how confident he was of, hey, I think this is going to be my home. Whenever you see him at practices, coming off the field, going into practice, the dude is yapping. He's a big yapper, always talking. Rookies get the vibe of like, I'm quiet. I want to learn my way. I'm a little bit nervous. Life in the NFL is a lot. I'm trying to get used to it. Keon Coleman seemed used to it from day one and seemed very comfortable with everybody. That's just who he is as a player. And it was funny to watch the veterans just laugh at him constantly, yapping and talking and having a blast.
That's funny. Love that confidence. Sean McDermott was confident in week 3 that he needed to see more from his team. And that was the thread really through week 3. We're not good enough right now. Then they get to Chicago. Good practice at Hallis Hall, certainly with the Bears. But then the game in front of a national TV audience, everyone saw what we saw. The ones didn't play and the 2s and 3s weren't good enough. How does Sean McDermott walk the fine line of keeping his guys healthy? And there've certainly been injuries, and Josh Allen isn't going to play in Tampa. First time he's never appeared in the preseason. So walk that fine line of keeping his team healthy and keeping Josh in bubble wrap, as he said in Chicago, yet also pushing the second team, the third team, and the guys trying to make the roster, trying to make the 53 of the practice squad to get the best from them, because we have not seen the best from them. As Deion Dawkins said last week, with 27 donut, that's not good.
It's a very, very fine line. I go back to training camp practices in Rochester when the Bills were facing a lot of these injuries early on. I think we had upwards of 14 guys missing practice and a couple who were limited that day. And Coach McDermott said to the media, we've been trying to dial it back to keep people healthy in hopes that we can return some, but we continue to get hurt. So we can't wait anymore. We have to get ready for week 1. We have to make sure that we're in a spot where we can go. I wonder if it would be a little bit different of a story if you were opening the season against a team that wasn't looking like a playoff contender. This is the Baltimore Ravens. This is a game where we could all look back on this season and say, wow, that actually played a big part in the race for the 1 seed. So I think that is in the back of everybody's heads, including the starters, to make sure we have to jump out of the gate and we have to be in midseason form. You also have to get that from your backups, because dealing with injuries, you don't know if this team is going to be at full health come week 1. We're expected to get a lot of the guys back. Wide receiver Khalil Shakir is expected to be back. Kicker Tyler Bass is getting into the fold again. But it's tough watching your 2s and 3s go out there and not put on the performance that you want them to.
Got a couple of things left here for Maddie. First and foremost, cut down day, which is never easy. Fans at home kind of are dismissive at times of preseason football, and you got to step back and realize that there are people, the men on this field have been fighting for this opportunity their entire lives. Like, this is their moment, and they're going to find out that they may not have a job, right? That dream is gone. This is the ultimate reality show in the final preseason game. Maddie, from being behind the curtain here, how difficult is this week and cut down day in general?
It's so difficult. This week in general, you have guys who are high stress, high anxiety because they know my job is on the line. I need to perform. And sometimes that's really tough when you have the weight of the world on your shoulders and then you feel like you need to go be Goliath on the field. It doesn't always work out. So not only are these guys just trying to focus on the job at hand, you know, there's families in the background, there's friends in the background, there's anything I do, the world can see. So it's a lot of stress. You see these players fight through injuries to try and prove, hey, I belong on the 53. I've shown what I can do. Please find a place for me on this roster. And there's some guys who have been a part of this roster practice squad the last couple of years who have been on the cusp of making the 53. Wide receiver Tyrell Shavers is a name that comes to mind. He's been somebody who's been a training camp darling over the last couple of years, and I think has probably been on the cusp and one of the first people out of the 53 in terms of being right there. So it's those guys that you build those bonds with, you form those relationships with, and you want it so badly for them because this is their livelihood. And it's always tough to see cuts day. It's not fun in the building. It is my least favorite day on the NFL calendar.
I agree. You go from roughly 3,000 players right now in NFL rosters to roughly 1,800 players in a matter of days. Some of them come back for practice squads. Some of them end up on some kind of list where they could play again later this season. But yeah, it's tough out there for anyone trying to make a team. You mentioned Goliath. I got to work in Galileo when, you know, a couple of weeks ago, Josh and his O-lineman had kind of a side deal of bet. Can he work Galileo somehow into the show?
Galileo Galilei was born in Pisa. He's the one who challenged the theory that objects fall faster if they're heavier.
Over the years, for some Hard Knocks, when guys are mic'd up, there's like a secret word that you work into the conversation to let everyone know that, hey, I'm mic'd up for Hard Knocks. Do the Bills have that?
Usually when they're mic'd up, we mic guys up all the time throughout the off season and in games. And so the best part is when you're watching these mic'd up videos that end up going out on social media, you see a guy go up to just about every player and they say, I'm hot, I'm wearing a mic. So usually they just flat out let the guy know, I am mic'd up, so watch what you say to me today.
Exactly. Or kind of work the secret word into a conversation, like Galileo, for example. That was all for the cameras. Maddie, one last thing. As a Tennessee person, right, having worked at Tennessee and experienced the SEC, compare SEC football fandom, and I know it's a different animal, to Buffalo, Western New York, Bills Mafia fandom.
It's very similar. I worked at the University of Tennessee for 4 years and knew I wanted to move on to the NFL at some point. It's incredible getting to work for a team, for a university where the fans are ride or die. They are there through the good times, and man, they're going to show up through the bad times as well. So coming into the NFL, I hoped, hey, I want to be a part of a team that has an incredible fan base because there are so many in the NFL. But Buffalo, there's something different about Buffalo. It's a blue collar town. It gets super cold in the winter. There's not much to do in the winter but turn on Buffalo Bills football or stand outside in -10 degrees as the snow is falling down, or help shovel out your stadium ahead of a Sunday night game. It is people's livelihoods here, and it's so cool to get to work for a team where, you know, you are the center of attention all the time.
Yep. Only game in town. Other than the Sabres, of course, that is. Granted.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yes.
Maddie
yes.
Glab, the Bills team reporter. You'll see her on the sideline as well during the preseason, doing a great job with our good friend Andrew Catalan. Maddie, it is great to have you on. Hopefully we get your Hard Knocks star turn actually in the episode sometime here before we get to week number 1.
We'll see if it happens. But Andrew, thank you so much for having me on. Best of luck this season to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maddie. Time now for our MVP of the week. And we're not going to give it to a player. We're going to give it to a family member, a player's dad, Jimmy Ciarlo's pops, Jim Ciarlo.
Who would have thought? See you guys in Florida. First time on a plane in what, 30 years?
Something like that. One last ride.
Thanks, Dad. One last time, man.
One last time, baby.
I love
you too,
Thank
man.
you guys for coming down.
How cool is it that Jimmy Ciarlo's dad, Jim, got on a plane to come to this game? And you see this moment with mom and dad and Jimmy before Jimmy gets on the bus, says, hey, I don't want to be the last one here. I got to get on the bus. Usually it's an hour. The game ends an hour later. That bus is leaving. Where Jimmy says, like, Dad hadn't been on a plane since before I was born. So that was cool. Let's give Jim Ciarlo the MVP of the week. It also should be noted that they were down on the field before the game. You see that moment where Jimmy comes over, sees mom and dad. They had field passes. Let me just say it. That's kind of rare for a guy that signed 2 weeks ago. Street free agents normally don't get pregame field passes for family. Obviously, part of it might be because he's a storyline in Hard Knocks, but it also speaks to the fact that the Bills have a cool organization, right? The Bills have a family-focused, family-forward organization, and they gave Jimmy Ciarlo's family some field passes. I thought that was cool. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Hard Knocks podcast. Next week is our final episode. We know at that point who makes the team, who doesn't make the team, as the Bills turn their attention to week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. Somebody from NFL Films will be here to put into perspective what we saw behind the scenes training camp with the Buffalo Bills as they ride off into the sunset and get ready for the games that truly matter. Want to thank Maddie Glab for giving us her insight in this episode. And don't forget to please share your thoughts on the show. You could hit me up on social media, on X, on Instagram. I'm at Andrew Siciliano. You could also comment on the YouTube page. However you want to talk back to us, we welcome it. We're going to be back next week for the final episode of Hard Knocks Training Camp with the Buffalo Bills, which will be out Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on HBO Max. I'm Andrew Siciliano. So long, everybody. The Hard Knocks podcast is a production of HBO and NFL Films in partnership with Pod People. The show is produced by Buffy Gorilla, Tony Mantilla, and Brian Rivers. The episode was edited for video by Kai Lee. Carter Wogan and Morgan Foose are our sound designers. Special thanks to Michael Gluckstadt and Kenya Reyes from the HBO podcast team, and to Ken Rogers, Katie Morello, and Pat Harris at NFL Films. I'm your host, Andrew Siciliano. See you next week. Thanks for watching and listening.